How you feeling out of this matchup?
I feel great. I think this is going to be a really good fight. She's very made a really good impression with her debut fight up in Maine, and is kind of one of the local tough girls. And I'm excited to go in there and test myself against her. I was surprised they were able to find me a matchup so quickly, and some of it was she was very excited to get in there and have a second fight. She's been waiting since February when her first debut matchup was, and she's been looking for opponents since, and so they were definitely excited to jump on board from their end. And I was like, oh, they have an offer for me. Okay, let me look this girl up and make sure it's a good matchup and everything. And yeah, and I was excited to accept after a little bit of research, and I think it's going to be a good one. And training at Jackson's definitely helps me see where I currently am and how I stack up against current Invicta and UFC fighters. It's been an invaluable experience to be able to compare what I'm doing for my training, how hard I'm pushing myself, my technique level, my skill level, against people that are already where I'm working to be. It shows me what I need to work on, what I'm doing well, and the level of dedication that it takes to get there. I wouldn't trade it for the world. Yeah, so I had my last fight back in January, and then I had already scheduled some traveling overseas after that. And then when I got back and went through a camp, the earliest I was going to be able to fight again was June. I had a fight lined up in June, and I broke my foot fight week. It was 3 or 4 days before the fight, and I was doing like pad work, and it was the last minute of the last round of the entire camp. All I had left was cardio, and I misstepped, and I heard a snap, and I yelped, and like it takes a lot for me to have that kind of a pain response. And went to the doctor. As soon as they could get me in to get an X-ray, and they're like, "Yep, 5th metatarsal is cracked and broken clean through in 2 places. You're lucky you didn't need surgery and pins, and hopefully you'll be walking in 10 weeks." And I was like, "Run that by me again." So ended up in a boot and on crutches for 10 weeks. Then started to learn how to walk on it again after that. And then started to ease back into training, and so realistically November was the earliest opportunity that I was going to be able to fight again off of that injury. So I ended up not being able to fight in June, and I had another fight lined up in July that I had to withdraw from as well for the same injury, and it was a long process, but I'm feeling good. I barely remember which foot it was, honestly, so I feel great. Yeah, so I'm a little bit behind schedule, I guess you could say, for where I wanted to be. The injury was a significant setback in that I was hoping to have a couple more amateur fights during 2018, but we're working with what we have, and we're hoping to get maybe a couple more amateur fights early 2019, and if all goes well, have a pro debut, maybe midway point through the year or later 2019. Well, I think newly experienced fighters tend to lead to more interesting fights because there's definitely that area of unpredictability. Like where she's only had 1 fight, I've only had 2 fights, and one of my fights was only 1 minute and 3 seconds long. So it's like neither of us really have a good idea what the other's going to do. We're just kind of going off of the little bit of footage that's available. So I think if anything, it'll make it more interesting because it's like, what's gonna happen, But I think you're right with what you were saying, that I have some very definite goals set out for myself, whereas I haven't talked to her directly, but I've heard similar things to what you were just saying, that she is still figuring out what her goals are in fighting, and I think this fight may be telling for her what she wants to do moving forward one way or the other. I went with what the doctors told me. They're like, all right, the earliest you can fight is November, and my manager and I reached out to every promotion that we already had contacts with and said, hey, what opportunities do you have available? I did reach out to Cage Titans and asked if they had somebody lined up to challenge me for my belt through there, and they didn't have anybody at the moment, and so I just kind of was like, all right, like maybe we can find somebody for that further on down the line, but let's see what other promotions have somebody lined up for me. And NEF was able to find me somebody pretty quickly, and so we went with them.
So I think we were talking about this before we went on camera, but there's not a lot of women fighters in this New England area, but there's a lot of extremely talented women fighters in this area. So I was kind of wondering, what are your thoughts about that whole thing? Because like you said, it's it's not like you don't want to defend your Cage Titans like belt. There's just not a lot of contenders around this area. There's not a lot of contenders around Massachusetts, around Maine, everything. So what are your thoughts about this region and the depth of the women's divisions?
It's difficult for all women to find fights in this area, I think, because there's definitely some good talent, but we're all so spread out that it's difficult for promotions to justify paying for somebody to travel in for an amateur fight. They're not going to make any money off of that. Neither fighter's making money off of that, so it's just kind of, there's not a lot of motivation for anybody to try and make it happen. So there can definitely be somebody out there that would be a really good fight to challenge me for my belt at Cage Titans, but they're far enough away that it doesn't make sense to bring them in for it. And so I think, unfortunately, for all women in every weight class in this area, it kind of ends up being like, I'll fight you, but we got to figure out who's going to like pay that to make that happen. So I think a lot of women's fights around here end up just being sitting around hoping that somebody can make it happen.
Do you find it frustrating at all?
I think that it's a common thing for women to get frustrated trying to find matchups in this area. Yeah, I think different parts of the country may have more luck, but yeah, over here it seems to be tough to find opponents that are willing to fight you, or that promotions that are able to bring somebody in to fight you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think you see a lot of that with like men's lower divisions, like 125 around here, 115. I know that Jack Stapleton or a few guys were trying to get a 115 division going around, but there's not many guys, even amateur or pro around there.
Yeah.
And even with the UFC cutting the division, now you're going to see even less, because a lot of promotions regionally are just going to follow what the UFC does. If there's no 25 division for them, there's no point in them trying to push people through. So. And
a lot of fighters, if their objective was to get to the UFC at 125 and now the division doesn't exist, then they're probably going to prioritize putting on muscle weight and moving up to 35 now. That way they can get used to it and start competing in that division before they get to that level. So I mean, it makes sense for local promotions to kind of mirror that, and there's just, you know, you match up who's available, and yeah, for the smaller men's divisions and for all women's divisions, there's not many of us available, and it's difficult to get those good matchups. And if you run into problems like, you know, my broken foot, like I had to withdraw from 2 different fights because of one injury, and so it's like, you know, that messes up matchups for 2 women there, you know, and it's just nothing you can do about it, and it is frustrating, but you know, we all have to work through it. Yeah, for this camp, I spent a lot of it over at Jackson Week MMA, and so I definitely appreciate them being willing to host me and, you know, run me through the ringer over there, make sure I'm ready for anything. And then I have a few sponsors. Medina MMA, Iggy does some of the best photography I've ever seen, not just for sports stuff. She's also done like weddings and graduations and everything, and it's just phenomenal. And then I have TKO Auto Sales has been behind me from the beginning, and they're, you know, like when I won my belt, they had me come over and they're all taking pictures and they're like pretending to face off against me for the belt and all that kind of stuff. So they're good fun. And then Nicole Plant, she works over at Salon Vicaro, and between the salon and her work, they sponsor me as well, and she does some of the most amazing hair coloring I've ever seen. Like the before and after pictures just blow me away. It looks like wizardry to me. Like I don't understand how it works, but she does good work. And I have Billy the Pizza Man. He also does like construction and like woodwork too, so if you need like your roof fixed, or if you want to have like people cater your pizza party, he does both. And he has like a portable pizza oven, and he'll show up and just custom make pizzas for your party like on the fly, and it's like, I don't get to eat pizza very often, but when I do, I always get his because it's just amazing. It's good stuff. So you know, can't turn down that opportunity. And then my teammates from my teams around here, I train both here at BST and then also up in Worcester at Worcester MMA. And both those teams and the coaching staff there have been phenomenal in helping me get ready here. I think the biggest thanks goes out to my head coach, Julio Colon. Like he takes care of me and makes sure that I have everything that I need, and you know, whether it's emotional support or even just like, oh, I need to go buy food, but I'm so tired, I don't want to drive. He's like, I'll come get you, and he'll drive me to the grocery store. You know, just like anything that I need, he's always there for me.